Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports, and I'm so excited to be covering the NBA draft night a little bit more here with another trade idea video specifically focused on trades that could potentially go down on the night of the NBA draft here in 2022. And this is the even more edition. This is the third draft night trade video we have up on the channel. If you guys are new to Utility Sports, I recommend checking out those other two, leaving a like on today's video if you have been enjoying the content, and also subscribing to the channel. Again, I try and push that as much as possible because I don't want you to miss out on any of our content, because I feel like we're growing at a pretty good rate here. I want to thank you guys. The subscriber rate is up to 14%. I jumped from 9%. So that's a huge credit to you guys. You've done such a great job hitting that subscribe button. So let's keep that train rolling. Let's try and get to 20% after today's video, which is an incredible amount. We'll see if we can do it. That is a high bar to set. So we'll see if we can get there. It'd be awesome if we could. And I just want to say, again, thank you. We have a huge announcement coming up in the next couple weeks here. I'm super excited to be announcing it. We're going to announce it live on the channel. And it's around the idea of us, not me. And you're going to really like the idea. I think this video is going to showcase kind of what the theme of the channel is, and what the theme of the channel has been for the almost year and a half that we've been recording videos here now up on YouTube. It's been really viewer focused, viewer centralized, and I hope that you do feel like this is a fairly collaborative platform. I think that's one of the things that makes us different from other content creators on this app. There's a lot of really great content creators out there, no doubt about that, but I feel like we're just a little bit different from them with the involvement of our viewers on the channel. I do read every single comment. So today's video, what we're going to talk about here are, first of all, 6 more awesome trades from viewers' comments, and that's what I'm talking about here, us, not me. This is a you guys channel just as much as it is my channel. I love to hear your guys' thoughts on the NBA, the current state of the organizations, all 30 of them, and just hearing everything and then giving my analysis on your guys' opinions. And then also just generically speaking on the teams that are in the trade discussions. Maybe if I could see them making a move, or if I think they're going to stay put at that spot, and maybe who they could even look to draft. We'll talk about a little bit in this video. Then I want to know from you guys too, if you want more draft night trade videos on the channel. Like I said, this is the third one, and I don't want to use too much of the same content over, but again, if you guys are really enjoying it and there's been a lot of likes on those videos, I would love to keep it going as well, as long as it's something you guys are still interested in. So if you do want more, go ahead and comment more NBA draft night trade vids, and I'll oblige to that if you guys do want it. Again, I read every single comment. And then if you do want it, comment some more trade ideas that you have. Again, I'm looking for more comments to put into these videos that you guys have if you are interested in seeing more. So comment number 1 here comes from Boris, and he actually has 2 in this video, but the first one here I thought was one that's been highly talked about and really split in fan opinion on this. So let's go ahead and read his comment. The most obvious one to me seems like Detroit sending Grant to Portland for number 7. I know they've said they want 2 first, referring to Detroit there, but to get 7 seems reasonable. They can draft Ivy or Sharp potentially at 5, and maybe Jalen Duren at 7. And he brings up a good point here, but it is highly contested from both fan bases. Blazers fans say, no way do we want to give up pick 7 for Jeremy Grant. This pick's super important for our future, and I agree with them. And then again, the Pistons fans, like Boris alluded to there, want 2 first-round picks. They want more value than number 7 for Jeremy Grant, which is definitely interesting to me. I think that the value here does line up fairly well. Jeremy Grant is a player who I think historically, when you look at trades, would get valued somewhere around that number 7 to maybe number 10 selection. But I understand it from both sides here on why the fan base there in Portland is kind of worried. They hired Mike Schmitz, who's a phenomenal draft analyst himself. I look up to him. I think he's an incredibly bright talent evaluator, and his hire there as an assistant GM, I think, makes Blazer fans hopeful that they're going to use that pick and draft someone really, really good. But at the same time, it's the 7th pick. You do have an aging star there in Damian Lillard. And if the goal is to win, this is why a trade like this makes sense. You bring in Jeremy Grant, who's 28 years old. He's in the heart of his prime, coming off a 20-point per game season. And that's why Pistons fans view him so valuable, right? He's a 28-point per game score, or 20-point per game scorer, who's in the heart of his prime, like I just said. And he could help teams because he's a solid defender as well. He does a lot of good things that contenders would like. The one thing I'm going to say, though, is he does not score 20 points per game on a contending team. That's just the reality. He scores 20 points per game on a team that's picking high in the lottery. I don't think that Jeremy Grant is as good of a player as a lot of other people make him seem to be. So Blazers fans, I understand why, but at the same time, I could see this deal coming to fruition because, again, the Blazers want to win. And right now, Jeremy Grant is a better player than most of the guys they're going to be able to draft at 7. I think Jeremy Grant currently is a better player than Jalen Duren. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. Now, in 4 or 5 years, who would I rather have? I think the answer is obviously Jalen Duren, which is why both of these fan bases are so split, because Detroit wants to be competitive with Cade Cunningham. Portland doesn't want to mortgage all of their future to build around Damian Lillard. And I understand it from both fan bases' perspectives. You guys can both disagree, and neither of you be wrong. I think that Pistons fans would want to get 2 first-round picks for Jeremy Grant, and I understand why. He was a great signing by Troy Weaver, who, yes, Weaver's made some questionable decisions in his tenure, but who hasn't? He also inherited a lot of garbage from Stan Van Gundy, and I think, he's rebounded about as well as he could. Obviously, getting the first overall pick and selecting Cade Cunningham goes a long way in helping in that regard. But at the same time here, does 7 move the needle enough for this team? I would love it from Detroit's perspective if you can add like Ivy and Duren, 2 players I'm very high on. I think that's 2 of the top 5 players in this year's class. I really do. And if you add that to your already core of Cade Cunningham, Isaiah Stewart, Marvin Bagley, if you can keep him around, and then also Sadiq Bey, that's pretty good. You also have Killian Hayes still in the fold, who I think coming off a bench role with Ivy and Cade Cunningham being the starters would probably fit a little bit better. And I think he kind of serves as a good backup point guard in this league. I mean, that's pretty interesting for me from Detroit's perspective. Now, for Portland, does Jeremy Grant move the needle enough? I don't think so, but maybe if they have some other moves in the wings, maybe if they find some other ways to upgrade this roster, get another wing in there, maybe they really believe in Nasir Little. Maybe they think Nasir Little is a winning wing. Maybe they feel like they have enough talent there. And if they do upgrade at the power forward position, which I think Jeremy Grant would be a phenomenal fit next to Yusuf Nurkic, I think that those 2 guys would be a very good front court duo, even though neither of them are probably elite level players. I think together they could be a pretty good combination. And the biggest thing is if Damian Lillard's healthy, this Blazers team's pretty good. And he just wasn't healthy this past year. Maybe Jeremy Grant helps them advance a little bit further in the playoffs. If I was actually making decisions here, I would love this more so for Detroit than I would for Portland, but I understand why both sides either don't like it or would want to execute. I mean, it's a real split on what fans want here. But again, I think pick 7 in a very deep class probably is good value back for Detroit, in my opinion. I know Pistons fans aren't going to agree with that, but at the same time, Blazers fans won't want to give up pick 7. It's a funny dynamic situation here with this deal. Again, thank you, Boris, for the comment. Then we move on to comment number 2, and we have a Pistons fan here also commenting about a Jeremy Grant trade. But again, now a Pistons fan saying, let's trade Jeremy Grant. And this one actually does net you the 2 first-round picks. So thank you, Rogue Blue, for commenting here. He says, Hornets receive Jeremy Grant, and the Pistons get their 2 first-rounders that they would like, pick 13 and pick 15 from Charlotte. But in return, they have to take on Gordon Hayward's contract, which is around the league right now looked at as a net negative. But in Detroit, I don't think it's a terrible situation. You get to keep a veteran presence in that locker room. And Gordon Hayward, when he's been healthy, he's been a good player. In Charlotte, he's been playing phenomenal basketball next to LaMelo Ball, and I think he could play really good basketball next to Cade Cunningham. The issue is you're going to have to book in 20 to 30 games he's going to miss each year, because after that horrendous ankle injury in Boston, he just hasn't been the same player in terms of durability or quite nearly his explosiveness that he used to have back in Utah, which I don't think a lot of people really realized how athletic of a player he was. But he's still a good NBA player, and you get 13 and 15 here. And then for Charlotte's perspective, you bring in Jeremy Grant to be your long-term starting 4. Now, again, if I'm Charlotte here, I'm a little hesitant to give up pick 13 and 15. And again, it comes down to your evaluation of Jeremy Grant. I myself would not be in the business of trading 2 basically lottery level draft picks for him, especially with how I feel about evaluating and finding players who are very good outside of the top 10. I think it's really possible to find not only 1, but 2 contributors from picks 13 and 15 that could help your team win long term. And if I'm in Charlotte, if I'm Mitch Kupchak making the decisions there, and he has a really great track record as well of drafting, I would say, okay, we could either push our chips in here for Jeremy Grant, who, yes, he's only 28, but at the same time, he's 28. That's quite a bit older than LaMelo Ball. Do we just want to play this out, bring back Miles Bridges, maybe trade one of these picks for a center, or maybe just draft a couple centers here and see if one of them hits? And I think realistically, that's maybe the best outcome for Charlotte. But I understand the idea here that Rogue Blue has because this kind of fits what Troy Weaver's looking for in terms of 2 first-rounders that are near the top of the draft. Of course, both of them in the top half of the NBA draft this year. You get Gordon Hayward, who's a pretty good player back, even though he's on a contract that's not desirable. Detroit would be willing to eat that, I believe, just with the current state of their roster. And I think he can still help them be competitive right now, which is important clearly to Troy Weaver. And then the Hornets in turn do get better right now. They get Jeremy Grant. If their goal is to push into maybe being a 6 or 7 seed and having a better shot at making it into the postseason through the play-in tournament or outright even avoiding it, I think Jeremy Grant, just the fact that he's going to be healthier than Gordon Hayward, probably more available and fixes some of the defensive concerns there in Charlotte, probably does help this team enough to maybe move the needle there. And then they have to ask themselves, is that what we want? Do we want to give up our 2 picks this year that can maybe help us build something a little bit better long-term? And in turn, then we add Jeremy Grant and we get better now, but maybe mortgage a little bit of that long-term success that we could potentially find if we hit on those picks. That's really the big question, right? Do we want to trade future assets or players that are going to become future good players for a player who's currently good right now? Because the player who's currently good right now is more of a sure thing, that's for sure. But if you're Mitch Kupchak as well, you have to say, I feel pretty good about my draft record and the players I've taken. So maybe I want to keep these picks, but I think it is a very intriguing deal. Let me know in the comment section which one of these deals you would take as well. I'm very interested in with this one as well for the Pistons. Then comment 3 here, and we have a comment from Cheeto Dictator. So thank you very much, Cheeto, for the comment. He says, Pacers trade up to get Jaden Ivey. That's definitely something that we have talked about in the past as a potential outcome. Kings receive the Pacers 2022 first, which is pick number 6. Cavaliers 2023 first round pick, which is to be determined, obviously, based on next year's records. And Malcolm Brogdon. So they get a starting level guard who can play next to De'Aaron Fox, probably bring Davion Mitchell off the bench. You get the pick 6, and you get a future first round pick from Cleveland, which I think could still be a pretty decent asset. You know, with the play-in tournament especially, there's no guarantee Cleveland makes the playoffs next year. I think it's possible they do, but it's not a guarantee. And then the Pacers in return get pick number 4, which they would use on Jaden Ivey, because I think that's basically coming to fruition here, that Jaden Ivey will not be selected in the top 3, which I think is a mistake from those 3 teams, and Harrison Barnes. Now, the Harrison Barnes thing here is where Kings fans are going to push back a little bit, because they're going to say, okay, well, I don't know if we want to do that because we want Harrison Barnes on this team because we're trying to compete. That's the whole point of moving down from 4 to 6, is to get a good player like Brogdon and help this team win. And I understand that perspective. The one thing here with Harrison Barnes, though, he's good. I think that maybe the Kings have to give up a little or get a little bit more back in return here. And maybe the Pacers have to give up a little bit more if the goal is to get Harrison Barnes back. Obviously, the perspective here from Cheeto Dictator was to make the money work between Brogdon and Barnes. And I understand what he's going for, but I think there probably has to be a little bit more value going out, because essentially to me, the way he's looking at it is 6 and the 2023 first from Cleveland is equivalent value essentially to the Kings 22 first, which is 4th. And then he's kind of evaluating Brogdon and Barnes as equals, which I don't know if they are. I think Barnes is maybe a little bit more valuable. So, I mean, a few second rounders or maybe another protected first down the road, one that's a ways out, I could see being included in this. But if you're wanting to move up to 4 and you think Jaden Ivey's that special of a player, you should not have any concerns about trading a couple extra future assets or current assets to get the deal done. We know Indiana and Sacramento have worked on deals in the past. Hint, Sabonis, Halliburton. We'll see maybe if they can get another deal done on draft night. Comment number 4, Boris, again, thank you so much. By the way, thank you to everyone who has commented on any of our videos, even if they haven't popped up in a video yet to this point. Do really appreciate it. He says, if it turns out Anunoby is in fact unhappy, which there's a rumor right now in Toronto that OG Anunoby is not happy with his role under head coach Nick Nurse, especially offensively, is it possible Sacramento could get him for the 4th overall pick? I think that'd be a good fit for them. And this is what I'm really torn on. I don't know if people really realize how good of a player OG Anunoby is. Over the last few years, he's missed quite a bit of time with injuries. And it's kind of halted his momentum, I would say, into becoming a near star level player. I don't think he's a star quite yet, but I think that there's some potential for him to get there. He's improved his game so much year in, year out. He is a much better player, but because of those injuries, I think that he's kind of halted in terms of his offensive role. And it also doesn't help there in Toronto that we've seen a massive step forward from Pascal Siakam each year. Fred VanVleet's still that dude offensively and defensively. And then you look at, the emergence of guys like Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent Jr., to name a couple there in Toronto. they've got a lot of talent, even outside of OG Anunoby. So is OG Anunoby a little bit more expendable? And I think this is where I'm kind of having issues, because for me, I really value Jaden Ivey. I think Jaden Ivey is going to be such a good young player that if I'm Toronto, I'd probably do this, to be honest. But at the same time, it's not a sure thing that Jaden Ivey is actually as good as an OG Anunoby, or maybe as impactful, because again, it is the draft. Sometimes things don't work out the way you plan. Although I think Ivey would be phenomenal in Toronto. I think he'd be everything they're missing, honestly, from the offensive perspective. And I think he could fit in defensively, at least with his speed and athleticism. I think it would be fun to watch Nick Nurse coach this kid up. And then Sacramento gets a player who they don't mortgage their future for, because he is still young. He's a great wing player who I think would be one of the best fitting players into what Sacramento is building right now. And it's much easier to facilitate a trade because of his current contract in comparison to other contracts around the league right now. I think this is a really good starting point to this deal. I would want to know from you guys, who says no here? Comment Kings say no if you think Sacramento turns down this offer, and comment Raptors say no if you think the Raptors would turn this one down. I could see it going either way. I could see both teams saying no. I could see both teams saying yes. I mean, it's a pretty good offer, I think, here in terms of value. But again, it kind of comes down to the direction of the franchise. Where do they want to go? Do the Kings just want to use that pick? Or do the Raptors say, we kind of like what we're building here. We want to keep OG Anunoby, kind of keep the length and wingspan and crazy wings that we have already in fold. So I could see it going either way. Also, Scotty Barnes did kind of deny those rumors a little bit. But again, what's he going to do? Is he going to say they're true on social media? So there's a little bit of both going on here, I think, with Toronto and Sacramento. Comment number 5, and this one comes from Matthew. So Matthew, thank you so much for your comment. He says, Cavs trade pick 14 and pick 58 to the San Antonio Spurs for picks 20 and 25 and draft Jalen Williams at 20 and Dalen Terry or Ty Washington, whoever's best available, at 25. So clearly he's looking at it from the Cavs perspective here. I do think this is interesting because on this video as well, I gotten some comments saying that the Cavs, that Spurs fans specifically, do not expect the Spurs to make all 3 selections, but in fact, expect them to be aggressive, either moving up or maybe moving one of these picks into a future year. I could see either of those outcomes, and this is the example here of them moving up. And I think moving up with Cleveland makes sense because Cleveland's a team probably looking for wing depth and just overall depth, especially with the current status of their contracts. You look at Jared Allen, who just got a big extension. Darius Garland's going to be due for an extension soon. Colin Sexton's a restricted free agent. We have a video up on the channel of what I think could happen with him. I'll try and put a card for that here in this segment of the video. And it's intriguing to me because Cleveland, with some expensive work already with Allen and Garland coming up and Sexton, if they do re-sign him, they could use some cheap labor. They could use pick 20 and 25 to find cheap rookie depth, especially as some of these contracts do become more expensive. Because I'm not sure if Cleveland's going to have a real hunger to enter the luxury tax. And Karis LeVert, they have to get an extension done for him as well if they want to keep him around. And based on the package they gave up to Indiana, it seems like they would want to. So they're kind of in an iffy spot where if you draft at 14, yes, you get one player who's probably better than at 20 or 25 more than likely. But if you move down to 20, it's possible your guy could still be there, or a player who's on similar level of your player. And you could also add a little bit more talent at 25. Maybe you trade 25 back to a future year. It gives Cleveland some options that they currently don't have, just given the status of their draft picks. They already have 2023 out the door to Indiana. So this opens up some of their flexibility. And again, for San Antonio, the upside here is obvious. You already have a pick in the top 10. You move up to 14. You now have 2 lottery selections. And it didn't cost you a whole lot, right? It cost you 20 and 25. So basically, you look at one of these picks going out, the Thad Young price, and also the Derek White price, nets you pick 14. That's not bad, I think, for a way for San Antonio to recover from having picks 20 and 25. They'd have to feel pretty good about the end result there with 2 lottery selections. And then comment number 6 here. And this one comes from Paulo Banquero. So huge thank you to you. Obviously a big Rockets fan there, as you can tell from his profile picture. And he comments a lot. So a huge thank you to this viewer. And he says, personally, I would want that 7th pick from the Blazers for Wood, Tate, and the 17th pick. So obviously talking about Christian Wood, Jayshawn Tate, who was a great signing by Raphael Stone, and the 17th selection. I think there's going to be some real split here. And I think Rockets fans specifically, there's a huge divide in what they want. Some of them want to keep Christian Wood and think that Christian Wood can net them a first-round pick by himself. And I think he can, but you're looking at probably a later first-round pick Whereas if you package him with Jayshawn Tate and pick 17, this is decent value here moving up to pick 7. And again, I think this makes some sense for Portland and maybe a little bit more reasonable for Portland fans than maybe the Jeremy Grant trade, because you look at getting a good forward in Christian Wood, someone who can definitely help you. You look at getting Jayshawn Tate, who again is a forward I think can help you probably off the bench in a limited role in comparison to what he's been playing in Houston, even though I think he's a decent player who is nearing the start of his prime. And you get the pick 17, which if you do believe in Mike Schmitz and you think he's having an important role on draft night, which I think potentially he could be. He has not tweeted at all since getting hired by the Portland Trailblazers, which is interesting because usually throughout the year, he tweets all the time. I think he was a phenomenal Twitter follow for anyone who wanted to keep up with the NBA draft. He has gone stone cold silent. So it's pretty interesting now because he's in a role with the Houston Rockets, not really using his platform anymore. And I think, since signing with the Blazers, and it's interesting to me because it seems like maybe he is going to have an impact on decision making. It's been kind of unclear, but I think realistically he is talking to management there in Portland, talking about what the draft strategy should be. And I think that's why he's gone so radio silent. I think this would make sense though, because if you do believe Mike Schmitz is going to help make decisions, he will be comfortable helping them make a decision at 17, just like he would at 7, especially if, say, Keegan Murray's off the board, who he loves. I think this is a pretty good outcome here for both sides. Houston gets a second pick in the top 7. You have pick 3, pick 7, then maybe you go with something intriguing like Paolo Banchero and Benedict Mathurin. Maybe you go Paolo Banchero and, say, Jalen Duren if he's still there at 7 as well. Not that they necessarily need a center. They drafted Şengün, but Jalen Duren's pretty good. So that would be pretty interesting for me. I think Houston would get better long-term. And I think this is a good way for Portland to kind of mix the two, where they get better right now, but they don't mortgage everything by getting pick 17 back. And maybe you can add a 21, 22-year-old who can help now, say like an Ochai Agbaji or maybe a Tari Eason. There's some options there for Portland as well at 17 that still could make some sense. And then let's talk about NBA draft night real quick. I know this isn't part of the video that you guys were expecting to watch, but I want to know your thoughts. Here, Anderson wants to know, can we do a live stream here on YouTube on the night of the NBA draft? And there were some comments that were agreeing with that wanted it. And you can see 23 likes on that comment, which means a lot of you do want to see me live on draft night here covering the NBA draft. And I do think that's a possibility, but I have two options here and I would love to hear from you guys. Option 1 is pick analysis for most of the first round selections and maybe a few second round selections. Not at all 30 because it's very hard to keep up, but I would do a lot of them, at least 15, probably 20, maybe 25 if I'm really ripping them off quick. And they'll all be individually recorded. They'll all cover one single team, one single selection at a time, and there'll be an instant reaction to each selection. Plus, in addition to that, I would have an overall NBA draft night grades for each team after the fact, and another video on NBA draft night winners and losers. That's option 1. So you can see a ton of content coming out that night, which I'm really excited for. Or 2, I could live stream, which would be one long live stream on the channel during the NBA draft. It's less individualized per team because it would just cover the entire draft. And it could be potentially less convenient for viewers because, say you're a Houston Rockets fan and you want to know about the Houston Rockets, but I'm talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's the reality of it. I know some of you are like me and you want to hear about the entire NBA draft, but I also understand that some of you really only care about your favorite team or a few teams that you really care about, which I totally understand as well. I have a lot of friends like that, and I know a lot of our viewers are like that as well. So I want to pick the best option for you guys. I'm not opposed to either. I think both of them could work out really well, but I want to know in the comment section option 1 or option 2. Comment your thoughts here. Again, option 1 is the collection of videos. A ton of videos coming out and the winners and losers and draft night grades, or just one long live stream on draft night. Let me know your opinions in the comment section. I'll probably try and put comments in there and then try and pin one of them at least about option 1 or option 2, and then you can leave a like on that comment. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do enjoy all the time that you guys spend watching my videos. It does mean a lot to me. I'm so excited for about the future here at Utility Sports. 12,000 subscribers and growing. It's absolutely crazy. Like, subscribe, and comment Utility Sports to the moon. If you are still watching, again, thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate all the love. Lets me know you made it to the end of the video. Leave a like, subscribe. Don't forget to do those things. Check us out on Twitter. Links in the description. Thanks again so much, guys, for watching. Don't forget about the announcement coming up in the near future. Turn on notifications for that. And we'll catch you in the very next utility sports video.